Reading school assignments. Um,
Like one of those fishing boats. It's a metal. This one's a metal one. This one, yeah, this is a fishing boat. This one's a fishing boat. The one's like Jada. I can't. Hi, Billy. It's mine. I don't care. Yo, I don't care. You know.
hey man, I am asked again. Oh my gosh, Edgar made fun of me yesterday. Yeah, he claims that he has bigger muscles. Oh boy.
I never heard that. Oh my god, I started singing.
A good way to pronounce my name is Elvis. But as for the article, I think a good main idea of it is that like when you're doing exercise, it will clear like bad stuff, bad like stuff out of your brain. You'll be able to think better, and like it says here that the lymphatic system acts as a waste disposal to clear away harmful debris. But doing exercise can also help. And then sleeping. It's good to get a lot of sleep too, like I did today, to clear, make your brain work better. Yeah. I think that's pretty much it. Thank you for watching.
Where's the itty bitty spider? Stop. You're scaring me. Stop. Sit down there. That's crazy. It is. Organize stuff in your time. You may have those work. Where are you going? Back.
Did you do any exercise this weekend? You didn't? Yeah, that's a good start. That's a very good start. Lifting weights and stuff.
Oh, I go to the gym every day.
You lift weights every day.
It's not good to lift weights.
Oh, sure it is. If you want to build up muscles, you lift weights.
Every day.
If you want to lose muscle, you do it every day. Maybe you push some push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups. Where is Edward when you need him? He's the one that blocked me the other day. I was text messaging him at 100. About 100. Where is Edgar.David.Titus, also known as Be There 123? Let's record this thing. Okay. Now look at this. Look at this. Are you getting me sick? Where's Edgar? It's already 807. 807. I use it 24 hours. See, it's 807. Do you have 24-hour time? Why? better than 12 hours. Either one. Someone runs new cab just in the safe side. Come on, where is that? What did you do with Andrew? What? I'll be right back. I just gotta use the washroom. Don't mess up my Chromebook. Let it be. Okay.
I'll have a few minutes. It's 8:08. Can we quick wrap up the conversation and we'll share off the stuff with fire.
I know. How's he doing?
Yeah, the teacher said he was gonna be early to school.
Are you really getting
Yeah.
He's never been.
I tried to
He's always
pay
late.
He's always the last one.
Oh, he's here with girlfriend now.
I love that phone.
My friend.
What phone do you want?
Oh,
What? Excuse me? What did you just say? We get one they smash for free because that's awesome. The chance they're reselling money in that one. Garbage. Get an S11. Apparently you love no headphone jack, right?
Yeah.
One. You love radiation earbuds. or earpods. Anybody loves earpods, but it's not that matter. Well, guess what? What do I have?
So I like it a lot, but like all the
You scared me.
Oh, I actually still think that it's so cute.
Quarter inch connector that I can use. I have one right? Well, you don't want to get reused here. Smash.
Oh, I tried to hear this.
You don't even have that many because it's cheap Apple. You better not stop my life. You stop my life. Just for that, I'm going to start to record 2 hours.
But then we also went to like we went to the Overlook, which was really nice. We went to the little town. We also we went to the state park, which had like
Minnesota, right?
yeah.
Hello, Edgar.
Where the lake house is, it's like
I am done.
On the border.
Edgar, come here. Edgar,
it's like somewhere over
I am your
Yeah, your mom was
elder.
talking about you guys had like
I am your elder. Come here. Be there 1, 2, 3.
This morning is
Great.
unbelievably
It's great. What are you talking about? And don't say that on my live stream.
turn the live stream down, okay?
No.
Because I'm in a pissed off mood.
Huh?
Because
I told you I'm doing it every day now. That we have school. Hello.
that's just I can't swear.
Edgar. And how do you make fun of your elder? Don't do that to your elder.
Good thing no my speaks Russian. I'm gonna swear up a whole storm, just like the storm that happened today. Because
I love storms.
I love playing stuff.
Edgar.
The weather was. Don't record me, okay? Don't record me.
I'm not recording you.
I don't like being recorded. You know that.
And you're 14.
For years.
Come on, Edgar.
Questions, findings, wonderful. That's all for today's announcements.
Yes, thank you. Next.
Don't.
Why do we all have one period?
Edgar, don't push your elder.
You're not my elder. I'm type.
I can't survive.
You know what? I'm gonna tell Susan that I say the things that
Oh, they're gonna beat me up then, Edgar. Probably. Well, not for long.
God.
Not for super long.
Where is the charge? You know what? You know what, Elvis?
What?
Dumpster traffic.
No, what do you mean? If you were late for school, wouldn't that have been a good thing?
No, because there's a stupid dumb ambulance that was going on Downwood Road.
I don't either, but
Side of the dumpster, and then the same annoying ambulance went to the other side. They were idiotic moron Asian grandpas that were driving like 10 miles an hour when they were supposed to drive like 40.
Well, if you're late to school, then you get to miss a little school. That's a good thing.
I don't want to. I just think this especially over during my summer.
Edgar, what are you getting for Christmas this year?
I have no idea.
Remember,
Dad, she there.
you want 2.5
Yeah, in
minutes?
the back of the room. Doing some kind of meeting. I want.
This is so not fair.
This
I
is
know. Like
No,
waking
she has a
up is
meeting.
not
She has a
there.
meeting. She's like, oh, they're on
Edgar.
like,
Also, why would you block me? Just because
If I
I'm
walk out of
sending
this place, they're gonna
text
take me
messages
out.
at 100, that doesn't mean you block your L.
I literally love that.
Vibrate. My phone was on vibrate. It was like buzz, 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 buzz. So I couldn't take the buzzing of my phone.
I was up until 1:30.
Education is important.
So
Edgar, how dare you want to L? That means
Okay,
later
then
than
what are you gonna do?
that is so.
Clean that.
okay, you know
No,
like
this
this.
is why I don't love people. Like back when I was
What? What did you just say, Edgar?
she'd be like, oh, you need to do this.
You don't know that because you're not Russian.
I am not Russian, Edgar.
And let me check Snappy Chat.
You finally have an unlimited data plan.
Yes.
I still have a better phone. Yeah. Yeah. Why is your Wi-Fi on?
Just keep going.
To prove it, you gotta shut your Wi-Fi off.
please answer the
Oh my God, this is so good.
Miss Miha, what a morning. Because there were stupid, idiotic cars like driving 10 miles an hour.
Yeah,
And
the
then there was
weather
a
makes
dumb
things.
ambulance that was going down Dumpster Road where like my niece is, and then goes up there and said to myself, what the F is the driver doing? Because
Take it down.
I'm just angry
I
and
know, venting.
yes, I'm
I get you.
raging.
That's why you leave early. Why you leave at 10:30?
I was a little frustrated this morning.
Yeah.
too. My
Even
commute
my
is
mom
like
was
45
driving. I
minutes,
still
so.
felt bad. I apologize. I'm angry.
That's okay. How was your weekend, guys?
It was great.
It was awesome. We went to Jordan State.
You went to a different state?
Yeah,
Where?
Indiana.
Oh, nice.
Indiana Dunes.
Awesome.
Nathan
the
was
dunes?
fun.
Good weather, right?
We have cloudy there.
Yeah.
I went to buy fireworks yesterday, but
Yeah. All right, well, we're gonna get started, you guys. I did get most of your videos. Thanks for doing that. If you had any trouble with it, just talk to us. Well, Mr. Williams
oh
may
my god.
pull some people back just to try and figure out what was going on. Because I think some people had a little bit of technical difficulties. So no worries here in the beginning of the school year. Don't stress out too much about it, okay? But we do need to pretty soon here be all on the same page with doing homework. So let's put phones away, make sure they're all the way away, like mine here. Remember, it's better to have them in your bag, not in your pocket, okay? All right, and then if you guys could get on Chromebooks, I want you to look at another article that's a little bit easier to read. And then eventually I rearranged seats so that instead of groups of 4, we have groups of 3. I think it might, since we have so many tables in here, I think it might be nicer to spread out a little bit, okay? So we will be mixing up groups a little bit. All right, so open up Classroom. In that same post with the junk, clearing out the junk article, there is another article called, I don't remember, something about sleep and brain, but it's in that same post. So go ahead and open that post and scroll down until you could see the other article.
Got it, toxic brain.
Oh yeah, I did the editing. I did.
I feel something. I read a card. There.
And then can we push these tables back? You guys on the side trying to help me push these back. So we're not going to have all these anymore. All right, so Mr. Williams. Yeah.
Google Classroom.
You guys see that other article that I posted?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So the article that you guys read, I think I told you is like a 1300 Lexile, which is kind of the highest reading level for even just anybody in high school. So if you had some trouble with the language in that reading, that's totally understandable. Okay, so don't feel stressed out by that at all. I just wanted to see if you could kind of grasp the main idea of it and try to sum it up in, 45 seconds or something like that. So keep that in mind. The article that I posted now that you're about to just skim over and read is definitely a lower reading level, on a more appropriate reading level. And so why don't you just skim over that? It's basically the same topic, concept, research, but just about sleep. The research on exercise was more recent, I think in the last year with the mice and the rats. And then as you're reading it, I want us to start thinking about the terms claims, evidence, and reasoning. I know you guys have talked a lot about that in school before now, but what is the claim that's being made in these articles? What is the evidence to support that claim? So evidence is usually like what would you say? How would you describe the evidence for this? Like, what's another way to describe what we mean by the term evidence? Like if somebody makes a claim that so-and-so came and, took the chair out of the room, what's the evidence to support that claim? Somebody saw that person walk in and then walk out without a chair, or what? So it could be a camera caught that person on camera. That's the evidence, the data, right? Okay, so for this, let's just say it's the data that's collected to help prove the claim, okay? And then the reasoning is going to be the information, kind of the scientific reasoning. So the scientific principles or ideas that help to explain the evidence, kind of explain the evidence further. Okay, so see if you can skim through the article, talk about these with your groups, and then see if you can come up with some ideas that I can put on the board for claims evidence.
It's got a toxic brain.
What is it called?
Got a toxic
brain. Yeah, can you guys open up that one? Just read through it. Yeah. So if you open, it's in that same post. I think there's 3 things there. It's gonna be And I like the analogy that they use in this one, called, yeah, the dishwasher. I think it always helps us remember things when we have a nice, easy analogy or a comparison.
No, that's not true.
And was anybody absent on Friday? Anybody here absent on Friday? Okay.
What is it? Oh, yes, yeah.
Trying to learn everyone's names. I know.
Another word for claim might be like the conclusion of the scientist, okay? All right, so talk about this as a group after you skim over it and try to figure out what's the claim, what's the evidence, what's the reasoning here. And then maybe I'll call on each table and somebody can agree to kind of like give us some ideas from your table.
The claim that the studies show that sleep may allow your brain to clean up after itself.
Yeah, so you're gonna, what do you think the claim is that the scientists are making? Like, or what's their conclusion, their main conclusion, right? What's the evidence that they collected, or the data they collected, the research, the experiment that they did to see, yes, this is actually supports my claim? And then how do you explain that research? So you guys talked a little bit about the fluid moving in and out of the cells. That's where you get into the reasoning part of it, okay? And if you want to jot it down on a piece of paper so that the person kind of like throwing out ideas or want to type something up has something to look at, that might be easier. You don't have to type anything up, but if it helps you to type something up or write something down, that might be good.
I'm gonna drink water. No, not you.
The more you sleep, the better your brain functions. The more you when you're awake and thinking of moving things around you, there's something that goes up between stuff. This way, takes away the brain system that pumps fluid through the brain and cleans out the waste. The reasoning is it shows that like every time we're moving around that like release and the top of the especially
What about you guys? Did you talk about it? A little bit? Are you still reading? Sorry if I'm interrupting you.
We're done.
Okay. So what do you think, Colleen?
Sleep may allow your brain to clean up after itself.
Okay, that's a good, succinct, concise way of saying it. And then the other article would also say what? So if you added that to that, not just sleep, but
The website that you
exercise. Right, so that's a good way to do claims. So when we do this ISPOD lab with the bugs, you're gonna have to do claims evidence reasoning with the lab. So I'm just trying to give you guys some practice at doing that. Okay, it's obvious what the point of the articles were, but I just want to make sure you guys can do this for the lab too. Okay, so what would be the evidence?
They tested it on the mice.
Okay. And so what's the actual data that they collected? And how did they test it for the deaths?
They tracked their brain, and it was not active on the sleeping.
Okay, so not just the electrical actions though, but also the what? So think about that when I talk about evidence. I'm gonna want to know the what. What did they find in terms of, are they measuring distance? Are they measuring volume or amount of liquid? Are they measuring the electrical activity? Are they measuring the feelings of the mice? What exactly are they measuring to test that? You guys talk about that?
Do you remember the code to get into Flipgrid?
No, it was just a link.
Just a link, where was the link?
A Flipgrid in the in Classroom. That is literally yeah, it didn't really define exactly what is the right. Yeah.
It's 8 to 10 hours.
That's 7.5, 9. I found are my magic numbers. Never less than 7.5. My son kept me up until 10 p.m. last night, and I was so mad because that meant I missed my 7.5 hours sleep window. And I can't reason with a 4-year-old and tell him that. He doesn't understand those terms. So, what 4-year-old stays up till 10? Anyone?
Oh,
No, that's
not
not
10. No, 3 a.m.
A 4-year-old? You when you were little?
No,
Oh,
my sister.
sibling? Oh my gosh.
4 a.m., 3 a.m.
Well, then you have
She just
a
doesn't
much
sleep.
littler sister, right? How old?
4 or 5.
Yeah, that's challenging. Does it wake you up?
No, I ignore it.
That's good. Put your earplugs in. Okay, what was your claim? Claim? I don't know, good. So that, just like I told them, that's a very general claim. Let's try to hold that into a more specific one, because we've known that for many, many years. But this research actually gets more specific. All right, so we'll talk with the whole class here. We've got some good claims that are being made. I'm just trying to get more specific claims. So if we can be as specific as possible, the reason I'm trying to get you guys prepared for claims evidence reasoning is your summative tests in this class are claims evidence reasoning assessments, okay? So the lab that we're starting hopefully at the end of today and into tomorrow is we're using the bugs, and you guys are gonna be designing your own experiment with those bugs, but then you're gonna have to explain your results in terms of claims evidence reasoning. And that's more practice to get you prepared for the next week's first summative assessment, okay? So we need to get good at these. And did you guys do claims evidence reasoning, SIRS and Gemini, or in your schools before now? Okay, so you've gotten a little bit of practice with it. So if we say a general claim would be, everybody look up here, that sleep is good for you. It helps you to be healthier or whatever. Sleep and exercise are good for you. What's a more specific claim? Can anybody throw out a more specific claim that these scientists have found even more detailed information about?
How you sleep, your brain cleans itself.
Okay, so sleep and exercise, let's say both of these, right? Sleep plus exercise allow, so adequate maybe, not just some sleep or some exercise, but adequate. They didn't really define what adequate was. They just did this, not an experiment on people, right? They did an experiment on rats and mice, I think. Okay, so adequate sleep and exercise allow the brain to, let's be as specific as possible. What would you say here? To clean out the waste. Okay. And in the article, it calls waste what? This might have been a new term for some of you. What do they call the waste? It started with a D?
Debris.
Debris. Yeah. Okay. Debris. Okay. And then the evidence to support that, they did the experiment with rats or mice. It was in different experiments. And that's usually how they do experiments on this type of thing, right? And then what data did they actually collect? The amount of fluid, right? So it's not just, what's that?
That points to the brain on that.
Yeah, and so they talked about this lymph system, which is vessels that run along your blood vessels. And it's not blood in these lymph vessels, it's clear liquid. And that clear liquid actually goes and helps surround your cells and then pull out junk. Well, you don't have those lymph vessels, veins, whatever, in your brain. So for years, they were like, how does the brain get rid of waste when the rest of our body, we know, has the lymphatic system? So then they found out that there's this other fluid. Anybody remember the name of this? This was a hard word. Cerebrospinal fluid that fills your brain and helps keep your brain floating, right? So it's not like hitting against hard surfaces. It kind of keeps it floating. And so that liquid, actually, you said the amount of liquid, right? So what happens when you sleep? It goes faster. Your cells actually shrink a little bit to allow more fluid in there. And they said if you get adequate sleep, and I think one of the articles even said you get twice as much flow while you're sleeping into your brain, which was news to me. I guess that research has been out for 4 or 5 years, according to this article. So they actually were able to put them, I don't know how they do this, we'd have to research this, put them on a special microscope with dye inside their cerebrospinal fluid, and then be able to visualize that fluid and how much volume that fluid is going into their brain and increasing in volume and pulling out the debris. What do we mean by debris or waste? Because it's not like those cells are like have a stomach and a mouth and are eating, right?
It's like extra protein from like stuff around you.
Yeah, so our cells are constantly making proteins. So my myosin cells in my heart right now, or my heart cells are creating a protein called myosin that make my individual heart cells contract. There have been scientists, I know this doesn't sound ethical, that have taken a chicken heart, killed the chicken, but the heart's still beating, blended up in a blender, put them out on microscope slides, and you can actually see the individual heart cells beating. You can find videos of a microscope slide showing these cells actually beating. And they use that to do research to understand people with heart conditions or people that have like atrial fibrillation and their heart cells aren't beating together or doing the right thing. Okay, so the protein that actually makes that cell contract like this and then makes them all contract together is called myosin protein. And if you build enough myosin protein, that works, but sometimes those proteins get old and then the cell will spit them out and build new proteins, okay? So it makes sense. Every cell has junk, and then that liquid goes in, okay? So the evidence would be, how would you word this, guys? The evidence, yeah.
With your
Experiment with,
data.
okay, so data from experiment with mice. Showed what? Did it actually say 2 times increase, or did I see that in another article? Did it double the volume of the cerebrospinal fluid?
No, it's probably another.
Okay, so it showed an increase in fluid volume cleaning out waste in brain. This is a long sentence. It's probably going to be a run-on. That's okay. We're going to just get the idea. The ideas are what matter, not like whether or not you have proper sentence structure right now. Okay? So cleaning out waste from brains. And what am I missing? Data from experiment with mice showed increase in fluid volume cleaning out waste from brain during sleep and then also during exercise. Okay. Okay. And then the reasoning part of it, again, this is practice for when you guys do this lab and when you have your summative next week. The reasoning is like, I don't understand that. Can you help me explain that? That doesn't make sense to me. Or can you just give me more science behind how that actually works? Okay. So some of you talked about the lymph fluid going in around the body and that we don't have those veins in our brains. So there's still fluid in our brain though. And scientists can actually put that. It said a quiet mouse, get the mouse. I don't know if they like inject it with something to like quiet it down, but they are able to actually lay it on a microscope, put dye inside their fluids and then see that fluid volume increasing. After adequate exercise, I think they put it on a running wheel and or after adequate sleep. Okay, so then in that, this is just explaining it a little bit more. All right, so lymph fluid. I'm not going to write this all out. Talk about the lymph fluid. Discuss fluid in brain. Waste. Old proteins, etc. So you're just discussing all of this a little bit further so that it's easier. I mean, imagine you're just talking to like a 10-year-old. And you're trying to describe this just to a 10-year-old, a little bit more detail. Does that make sense? All right, nice job. Okay, so you guys are going to, we need to talk really quick because we're going to be working with these bugs. And at the beginning of the year, I always like to try and just define what is a living thing. So I'd like for you guys, I'm going to put you in your new groups. And then you're going to come up with some ideas on what are if you had to come up with 7 characteristics of living things, maybe you can only think of 3, but I want at least 3. What do all living things have in common? Okay, so we're going to spread out in the room, grab some whiteboards, and then write these things out, and then make sure we know, and then I'll let you guys look at the bugs and come up with an idea for an experiment that we're gonna start tomorrow, okay? First period, yeah, you guys are here tomorrow. All right, so,
Why are we what?
all right, some of you are in the same seats, or some of you might be with the same people, okay? But, we'll be switching up seats probably every few weeks, so just keep that in mind.
You know I don't have good vision of us. I don't have good vision in my sunglasses. I mean my glasses.
Oh, yeah, do some of you, yeah, Edgar, do you need glasses? Are you wearing glasses?
My glasses, they're old and they're broken.
Mine
Okay.
are older.
So
Okay, let's talk about that. Maybe, okay, I'm gonna have your group maybe, come up a little, maybe you'll stay here, so, because I did have you back here. Is that okay? So I'll have you with the same group, but I'll just switch your tables, so you can stay here. Okay, so you're gonna be with Emily and Ariana. Ariana's not here. Okay, so Emily, you and Ariana will be over on this side, okay? And then, the table behind that is gonna be, hold on. Wait. Oh my gosh. Okay, so Anam, Jobin, and Ariane are in the table behind there. And then Brett, Yusuf, and Raina are gonna be back there, okay, at the table you're at right now. Okay. And then at this table up here is gonna be Elvis here, and then Yasira and Josh. And then we have Lashana and Adriana. Lashana here where Yusuf was, Adriana there. And then Mark and Lazar are gonna be Mark and Lazar.
It's kind of cold.
Okay.
It's cold. How's it cold? It's hot.
All right, so characteristics of living things. I want you to try to come up with them first without looking anything up, okay? So if you want to move your table and your people back to a back lab table, you're welcome to do that. But I'm going to give you a whiteboard to just write some things down, okay? So go ahead and start discussing that. What do all living things have in common, okay? And then,
Okay.
They don't breathe.
They all breathe. They eat like, well, I mean, that's a living thing.
All the things.
I mean,
It's like a
yeah. They all have a source to stay alive. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah.
They all have a place to breathe.
What?
Yeah.
What is a fish breathe?
I'm more tired than you ever was.
Well,
He still breathes. But he still breathes. You inhale.
they
all right, discuss. We should all be discussing.
I
I know it's early. I know it's hard to talk to people when it's this early, but let's try it.
It's 852.
Okay, and then maybe just jot down things on here. Yes.
What else? I just need
I have nothing.
We did it.
You
Don't.
shouldn't be looking things up yet. I'll let you look things up in a little bit.
I'm gonna make up 3 things, right?
Yeah. So, are you alone?
No, she's got Edgar.
Emily,
Oh.
why are you being mean? You have an apple and then rub it out.
Yeah.
Hey, no. something about business. I love Samsung. Another Android. Don't talk about your elk.
Okay, so they all have a source of living. That's basically, yeah. Do they all breathe?
If you think about it, most of them breathe.
Yeah.
But like, if you think about it, like, fish don't breathe oxygen. They technically breathe.
It's breathing water.
They breathe.
Do they though? Because don't some like fish like come up the air?
If you can think of 7, yeah. But try to do like 3 or 4 for sure.
European party.
Oh, you stole my favorite colors. Oh.
I can figure out the websites controls and stuff.
I think everyone's here.
Yeah, not areas.
Oh, yeah,
Yes. I couldn't figure out how to I didn't like the video, but I can figure it out, and I can people sing the background of my house.
Wait, did you say? Don't say. Wait, does that say animals? Just say all living.
Or all
things.
living.
Yeah.
Because if you say animals, you're like categorizing.
So it's
I
our
have a plant in my house. I watch it. She doesn't sleep.
So remember, we've got not only plants and animals, but bacteria, fungi, even tiny little protists that don't fit into any other category that live inside a pond that are microscopic, right? So it's not just plants and animals.
So we actually know we write down at least 3 or
I mean, there are some that only put out flowers during the daytime, and then once it's cloudy enough or it's dark enough, they drop those flowers. So I don't know if I would call it sleep, but they have different. They're responding to something in their environment, whether it's night or day, right? They're responding. They have a little hair on them that responds when a fly lands on them. Or you trigger those hairs, you can trigger it with anything. No, acids that
Are you more
will,
tired than me?
if you soaked your fingers for a long time, then it would make
It's sleep later than me.
What time do you go to sleep?
I want to sleep after 2300.
Another one, they all have a place.
Yeah.
To live.
I hope to know that.
Is one of the regular show?
Yeah, that's the one.
I'm so mad at it.
And
Wow, that's
all living animals.
You want to sleep 200.
They're also part of the
Yeah, this is kind of
Oh, yeah,
disgusting,
you're
but
You don't know
lucky.
what regular
it's
show is?
true.
No, it's because I can't sleep.
All living and
You want
breathing
more
animals.
sleep later?
You know,
Why?
because I'm gonna be all tired in the morning.
And then what time did you get up?
6 in the morning.
I got up at like 6:35.
Yeah. Everything breathes.
Okay, I am live streaming right now.
Breathes in energy for the
On what?
And you
6, 7.
How do you do it?
What you watch?
They're all 7.
Classroom.
Because there might be more.
Trying to think.
Oh, it's on a different. I see.
Hearts. Have hearts.
No.
Oh, I thought you were talking about movies.
Oh no, I mean not just
I would like SpongeBob.
Yeah.
Oh,
2 people. But I've had the channel since 2011.
2011?
Yeah. January 30th.
All right, we got some good ideas here, guys. Try to come up with at least 3 or 4.
Now I do one.
I can't think of any more.
I can't do
I
it.
tried to watch.
Don't look.
I was
I
watching
never
your
think
live
of way
April.
more. It's hard to think is how tired I am. Sunday I always sleep like around 100 and I got up at 7:30. 7:45.
Everything was awesome.
Somewhere around there.
Friday evening, they tortured me with math.
I don't know if I when
I went to
the movie came out.
on the ball.
There we go.
30-year-old man who's
They took off milk.
Why?
What about fish? Or like, what about a turtle?
And then Saturday just
What about like micro?
relaxed. And on Sunday,
Good question. You have your motorcycle.
McDonald's.
You have your motorcycle.
A motorcycle?
Yeah.
Why do I need a motorcycle?
Really? Oh,
considers growth.
Well, the other pool is open up. They open up every day. Because, you know,
They move, right?
Plants don't move.
That's
influence. That is
pretty much.
that's dangerous.
Oh, well.
Yeah, what in the living kit, they all move.
that could.
I mean, not necessarily.
They all move. If it's one of the everything moves.
Well, sure, but there are some organisms that are
I'm a
like
good
called,
photographer because I took awesome pictures
like in
of
the name,
Chicago.
they have like they're made of shells and they hook on to like rocks.
I can show you during lunch.
Barnacles, thank you.
There you go.
What are you thinking,
so,
Elvis?
And then they don't move, even when the water moves,
We
they
got all
don't
we
move.
need to place on the
So-
food chain, okay.
Now, do
Please
they
stop
respond
texting
to things?
at 1 in the morning.
I
Yeah, maybe
Sometimes I'll
respond.
come up with or
What do you think about this? They all affect the environment.
But it's not always about that.
that seems pretty good.
Yeah.
I'm more tired than I'll ever be, probably.
Remember,
I'm more tired. than-
isn't this Canada's? I mean, it's a little different than have a place in the food chain.
Okay.
Because the food chain is different than the environment, right? Okay. But what else a living thing needs to survive? Or what it means to be a living thing.
Good question.
Huh?
All right, these look good, you guys. All right, so a lot of they all affect the environment. Good. What's this one that starts with this? Okay. Okay, so I see a lot of eating, breathing, reproduction. What else?
They die.
They die, yes. Okay, and then some people were trying to say, I think they move and so there's not always movement, but we could talk about responding to your environment in some way. Okay, so we call that responds to a stimulus. So a stimulus might be you get poked, right? And so I'm going to show you something really quick that is an example of that, and then we only have a few minutes left.
Really?
Yeah, well, we have
Science?
5 minutes left. But I wanted to just show you really quick, and we'll just start the lab tomorrow. That's fine. Something that I found once at a lake, and I wasn't sure what it was. Now, this is a video of Miss Pardon finding the same thing, but I found one of these too, and I can show you a picture of this later. So it's like this jelly. Oh, shoot.
Oh, God.
I guess I don't have access to view it, but it's just a picture of her, or a video of her seeing this jelly-like thing that looks like this on the deck at a lake. And she didn't know what to do with it. And so what would you guys do if you saw something like this and you weren't sure if it was alive or not?
I will just toss it back in the water.
Exactly. What would you do?
I'm just gonna toss it in the water where it's naturally
Just throw it in the water. Yeah, right. So I saw one of these too. It was about the size of my foot. And most people, when they say, like, what would you do if you weren't sure if something was alive? Most people say, poke it with a stick. Is it like the Simpsons episode? Yeah, so just because you want to see if it somehow moves or responds in some way, right? So that's the whole responding with to a stimulus or to stimuli. So stimuli would be anything, these things that are in our environment that cause us to respond in some way. So it can be a flower opening up when the sun comes out and then dropping as soon as the clouds come or it's a cloudy day or the nighttime comes. Okay? Or it can be a flower or a plant responding to sunlight and moving toward the window and actually facing the window. They move very slowly, but they actually move. Okay? Or it could be this gelatinous blob that actually responds internally in its cells, but not externally so that we can see any kind of movement. Okay, so there's not always movement. This blob, which is a freshwater bryozoan, is not going to move in any way that you can actually see. All right, so there's a lot of, I think, misconceptions when it comes to, like, what are living things? Do they breathe, right? So, like, plants take in CO2, but they don't take in oxygen. Do they have lungs? No, right? Cells, single-celled organisms might take in oxygen, but you're not seeing it by that organism like taking in a breath, right? They just absorb it from the water surrounding them. So the list of the things, and I'll just show you real quick, but that scientists have discovered are all characteristics of living things would be they grow and develop, they are made of cells, either one or more cells, right? And they require some form of energy. So they either use oxygen to make, most of them use oxygen to make that ATP energy. Do you guys remember learning about ATP energy in cells? Okay. They respond to some kind of stimulus. They reproduce in some way. It may be that they form a clone of themselves like bacteria do. They just split in half through binary fission. They don't actually have like male and female or anything like that to reproduce. Some kind of homeostasis, just maintaining like a normal stability, right? When we shiver, we warm ourselves up. When we're cold, that's a form of homeostasis. When we hold water in and don't excrete it through our bladder, that's what we do when we're dehydrated. Our body sends out a hormone signal to say, let's hold in some of that water because you're dehydrated. That's homeostasis. And then there's some form of adaptations that we've talked about. The aye-aye monkey with the long finger, the orangutan with the long arms for traversing the trees, etc. Okay, so let's think about these. This is going to be a theme that kind of comes up throughout the year, so I just wanted to introduce it. The lab I'm going to post on Classroom, you guys. And I just want you to skim through it so you're prepared with your groups tomorrow. Start thinking about ideas for what you want to do in terms of the experiment, okay?